This video will show you how to find a trade journal source, which is a professional source that is not considered a scholarly article. So the best place to look for these is with your library resources. So right here on the Canvas page, I'll open that up. And I could type my search right in here. I'm going to open this up in a new window so that I make the best use of my screen here. And it says kindergarten homework. I've typed that in my search bar, and let's see what pops up. Okay, so these sources marked periodicals are something that's been published periodically. So a magazine, a newspaper, or a scholarly journal can all publish periodically, once a month, once a week, something like that. Let's look at this one, Down with Homework by Alfie Kohn. Okay, so I can see this is the detailed record page on EBSCOhost, and it tells me a lot about the article. It tells me who the author is. It tells me that it was published in a magazine or journal called Instructor. It tells me that the article is 4 pages long, has 2 color photographs. There's an abstract here. This abstract is about 50 words long. Abstracts are used sometimes in trade journals, sometimes in scholarly journals. In a scholarly journal, you'd expect an abstract to be more like 200 words. So this is shorter than you would normally expect in a scholarly journal. So that's a good sign that this is probably a trade journal. The fact that it's 4 pages, that's a little short for a scholarly article. So that's another good sign that it's a trade journal. Okay, looking here, we can see that it uses somewhat casual language. So it says, this is a rather curious fact when you come to think about it. So that's a good sign that it might not be scholarly. It's hard to tell for sure just based on that. I'm also looking to see if they have in-text citations. And though I do see some quotes, that's just a hypothetical quote. I don't see a lot of in-text citations. I also don't see where there's like a clear presentation of actual research that the author has done. They haven't done like their own study. That's something that I might expect to see in a scholarly journal, but I wouldn't expect to see in a trade journal. So that's another sign that this might be a trade journal. So we've mostly ruled out the idea of this being a scholarly journal. We didn't see citations. We're not seeing original research. We see that it's kind of on the short side. Now, we haven't yet ruled out that it's a popular source, like a magazine or newspaper for, people in general to read. So we want to see what the audience is. Is this intended for an audience of professionals, or is this intended for a general audience? And here at the end, it kind of gives it away. It says, still need to assign homework? That's a question that you would only ask a teacher, right? You would not ask someone who works at Burger King or somewhere else, do you need to assign homework? Because that's not their job. So we know that this is aimed at teachers, and it has these recommendations for teachers. A scholarly article might sometimes have recommendations. They're not usually stated as bluntly as this. Consult your students, design what you assign. And even if they are stated like this, we've kind of already ruled out this one is not a scholarly journal. We don't see any references at the end of the article. Okay, so it looks like this is probably a trade journal. We can also check by looking up the journal or magazine online. So this one's called Instructor. Now if I just type Instructor, I might get some really random results because it's just a word in the English language. So I added the word magazine, and so this is Scholastic Magazines. Scholastic publishes Instructor magazine, and it said that on the detailed record page. And so this is what Scholastic has to say about their magazine. It says, Instructor magazine is the ideal professional resource to meet the needs of today's teacher. So that tells us that their audience is teachers, and they called it a magazine. Scholarly journals are pretty much never called magazines, but trade journals often are. Trade journal, trade magazine, they're kind of interchangeable terms. Okay, so based on that information, right, we looked it up. It's labeled as a periodical. It's less than 10 pages long. It doesn't include any citations, and it is very clearly directed at an audience of professionals. Based on this information, we should feel confident to use this article as a trade journal for our paper. Thanks very much.